Hello Stitchers! Today we're going to be revisiting an older video that I did a while ago, but I was never really happy with it, so I want to go ahead and give it a second shot. So we're going to be looking at variegated floss, and just a few different ways that you can use it that'll turn out very cool and pretty for your projects. So when you're using variegated floss, you're going to want to take 2 strands. And that's exactly what I have right here, is 2 strands of floss. And you're going to want to line them up so that the colors are the same. I know it's a little bit hard to see the colors here because of my light, but we'll see it better when it's on the fabric. And just line that up as best you can. And sometimes it even helps if you just wet it down a little bit. So we're going to take that and on the end just tie a little knot as close to the end of the thread as we can. And let me try to stay in the light here. There we go. And you can even take that other little bit and snip that right off so there isn't a huge big tail. So there we go. Now on the other end, we're going to also want to make sure that's lined up as well as possible, and we're just going to thread that both ends through the needle, just like that, and pull that about halfway through. So now we have a very manageable piece of floss to work with. And what you want to do with this, the reason that we tied this little tiny knot, this is not to keep the thread from coming through the fabric. We are actually going to do a version of a loop start here. So we're going to want to take our needle and pull it through here, and then put it down, and I can just about get this to show you on this side. But you take your needle through that loop, if this were on the back, and just put it through the loop and pull it, and now it ain't coming out. So it's kind of just a different version of the loop start that you can use when you're having to use several different strands of floss that you can't overlap, or you don't want to overlap for whatever reason. And when you're doing the stitching, you're going to want to do an entire full stitch at a time. So there's the first one, there's the second one, and we can already start to see that it is starting to transition into the orange. And there's our third. And now we can start to see that orange being separate from the red. And depending on the type of floss that you're using and how the color changes, these color changes may be a little bit more gradual or maybe a little bit more abrupt. But either way, your floss is always going to be more or less the same color on both the bottom half of the stitch and the top half of the stitch. This is the most typical way of using the variegated floss as well, to do the entire full stitch. There are other ways that we can do it, and I will show you those as well. Okay, and now this is another part where people seem to have a little bit of confusion, because we've finished this row, and we don't want to go back over here, because that's going to be about an inch worth of floss that is just going to be wasted. So we're going to start back over here, whether our first stitch is this one, or even this one. We typically want to go backwards, so we're going to start right here and just work our way back, doing our stitches the exact same way. So there's the bottom half, there's the top half, and eventually we'll start to see it transition into yellow and then green and then blue, and it will look very lovely. So now we're coming onto the end of our thread with the blue, and I'm just going to finish off this row and not going to bother to tie it off because it doesn't really matter with this one. So we've finished that off, and now we have a choice. We can either go back to the bit that we've already cut, with the blue and go back over the green and the red and the orange, or because this particular floss that we have then goes backwards, or doesn't go backwards but it loops, we can cut off a new strand where it's blue and purple and then back to red and orange, and we can use this one and just cut off that strand and keep going down through the different colors. And that's one of the ways that you can do that, or you can just pick up from an entirely different section, because as I say all the time, that I'm just showing you what works best for me and the ways that I like it. You don't necessarily have to do it the way that I do. So another way that you can use the variegated floss is we're going to make sure we're in frame. There we go. And we are going to do this. There we go. So we've got our half stitch there, and we are going to do a row of half stitches. So we have that one and that one. And we can see that the red, even though this is the exact same, or from the exact same cut that we used last time, the red is lasting a lot longer. And I did 10 stitches on the last one, so I'll do 10 stitches on this one just to show the difference. Okay, so now we're at the end of the row, and as we can see, the red appears to have lasted a lot longer. I'm not sure how well that comes across on the screen. And now we're going to go back, and at first the colors will be the same. We're going to have orange over orange for the first few stitches. And now we're getting to orange over red. And what's going to happen is that these stitches will look more orange than red because the orange is the one on top. So there we go. And with the threads like this, where the colors are always somewhat matching the one next to it, you can get this kind of neat effect here. And then other threads where it's like you'll have a blue, then a yellow, and then a pink in colors that don't really look the same at all next to one another. You get these really psychedelic effects. I'm trying to see beyond the camera and it's very hard. And I just did the way I normally do it, which I need to remember not to do that. And now we go back, and in this case, since we wound up back over here, that's where we're going to start. So all of our rows are going to go back, or front and forward, and then backwards. That's what I was trying to get to. And there we go. There's the last little bit there. And as you can see, in these smaller blocks, what you wind up with is a much more kind of gradual transition than you did before. But in the longer blocks, what you'll have is something a little bit more psychedelic. So another way that you can use the variegated floss is if you take two different strands from different sections of the floss. So that's what we're going to do right now. And this works really well with overdyed flosses, where you just have slightly different shades of greens or pinks or whatever, and you use those together and you can create a very kind of subtle changey effect. But it also looks really cool with these ones that just have a bunch of different colors in them. But if you go back to, I think it was my very first video on this channel, and look at the butterfly that I did, you will see an example of using that technique. That video was not very good though, so I may wind up doing another one. And you can do this using either method, either the full stitches or the half stitches at a time. And I'm going to show you both. So first I'm going to do the full stitch right here. And try not to bang onto the camera, but I think I keep zooming in more and more each time. Because I have to move the camera around my fabric. And you can see there's a little bit of red and a little bit of blue in there, which from a distance looks kind of purpley. Okay, and here's 2 rows of doing a stitch at a time, and I didn't cut this thread nearly as long as I did the other ones, so I'm going to go ahead and just do 2 of the half stitch rows where you do half the stitch going across the row and then come back and do the other one. And you can see how there is still some color change in there, but the colors aren't as bright. They're a little bit, I don't know, I guess bolder, but not really. It just looks kind of funky and a little psychedelic, and sometimes that's what you want. And I find that if you're doing something that you want to look like stained glass, this is a really good way to achieve that look with the overdyed kind of floss, where you have just subtle variations of a single color. With these kind of funky ones, you just get this kind of funky coloring. But I'll probably do another piece of just like a very small variegated piece to show you guys with slightly better quality, because the butterfly was not very good. And I might even be able to get that done this week and link that to the back of this video so that you can see a little bit better. And here we go. And it's not too much of a difference this way because you've already got so many different colors going all over the place. But there's one row. And now we'll go on to the second row. And it's, again, just like I always say, these are some ways that you can do it. There is no strict right or wrong way to use variegated floss or overdyed floss or really anything. This is just a few ways you can use it, and the way that the floss will behave when you do use it this way. But it's always fun to experiment and to try new things and to just say, I wonder how this will look if I do it this way. And this is how these ones look if you do it these ways. And my camera is right in the way. But you can see there's a little bit of subtle change in between the colors because they don't change necessarily at the same time. Because one strand may have more of one color than another on the other strand. And these colors don't all match up anyway, so it looks really cool and kind of funky. But you still have that variegated look where it's not quite the same row to row. There are some differences, and that's always cool. And I just put a knot in my thread. There we go. But there we go. That's a few different ways that you can use variegated threads, and there are surely many more ways out there, but these are the ways that I find work best for me. And there's the end of that row. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section down below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. But I hope you found this helpful and it gives you a good place to start. And until then, I will see you next time. Bye!